Hello, I'm Richard Adkins, Forestry Supervisor for the City of Phoenix Parks and Recreation Department. I also serve as the Arborist for the City of Phoenix. So as a certified arborist, I manage the crews that go through the city, and we maintain over 100,000 trees for the citizens of Phoenix. This morning we're going to talk about some basic techniques for pruning trees. But first I want to talk about safety. Personal protective equipment is one of the first things you need to consider. I always like to have a hard hat because you are pruning up over your head, a pair of good leather gloves, and some eye protection. Always very important. And personally, I like long sleeves because especially in Phoenix we have lots of thorny trees, so that can help protect your skin from getting scratched. The next, you want to have the proper tools. Most homeowners are going to be using smaller tools, not necessarily chainsaws. So you want to start out with a pair of hand pruners. These are called bypass pruners because they cut like a pair of scissors. That makes a nice clean cut as you go through a branch. These will cut branches up to about a ½ inch. You want to go a bit larger, a pair of loppers. These have 28-inch handles. You can get some good leverage on them, and you can cut up to about 1.5 to 2 inches diameter branch. Anything above that, I prefer a handsaw. Now this handsaw is a little bit different than one you find commonly. This has a tri-tip blade. It's very sharp, cuts on the back stroke. You can find these at a couple of specialty arborist stores here in the valley, or you can get them at some of your hardware stores. Now other than that, if you're going to prune overhead, I like to use a pole pruner. It has the same simple cutting action as a pair of loppers, or even just a pole saw, which is just a hand saw with an extension. This will get you up to about 10 foot. So with that, after we've got our safety equipment and our pruning tools, the most important, and I want to emphasize, is have an objective. What is your goal to pruning? You don't want to just go out and start pruning. You want to have some objective in mind. Is it visibility? Is it elevation? Are there broken branches? Does the crown need to be thinned? Do you need to reduce it back from a sidewalk or your home? So that's something to consider. And once you have that in mind, we're ready to start pruning. So it's important to remember that there is a difference between young tree pruning and mature tree pruning. Today we're in Encanto Park, and we're looking at a Dalbergia Ciso that was planted about 1.5 years ago, and it's time for a little bit of structure pruning. So that's what I mean by young tree pruning. And we're going to prune the structure for future growth. So we're actually training the tree to grow as we want it to. Like I said, that was our objective, and as I'm looking at this tree, I'm seeing there's 2 fairly heavy branches right here. So I want to remove this lower one because I like the structure of this branch better. What you'll see is there is a swollen area right here at the trunk and at the base of the branch. That is called the branch collar. This is the branch bark ridge. This is where the branch and the trunk are kind of growing together. So you can see where you want to make the cut. You do not want to cut it close here because you're cutting into what is known as the branch protection zone. And you don't want to leave it out here because that would be a stub, and that can lead to pest and disease. So this is a fairly large branch. This is too big for loppers. And a lot of times people will just start cutting, and with the weight of the branch, you're not able to hold that. And the tissue on the underside of the branch is much stronger than the top, so the branch often rips. And you see that in a lot of people's homes. So what we want to use is the 3-cut method. We go out about 6 inches from the trunk, and you make a cut about halfway through the branch on the underside, and then you come back just out from that and make the cut on the top, and you see it snaps off and falls very clean, so it's a very directional prune. And then you come back just outside of the branch collar and you make that cut there. So what you want to do is make it clean, correct, and smooth. A lot of the times trees will develop heavy branches on one side or in part of the crown. It's not always necessary to remove the whole branch, but you want to subordinate that or reduce the size and the length and the weight on the end. A lot of times people just come back and say, oh, that's too long, and they just cut it right off, and that's in like mid-node between the two growth points. That'll lead to excessive sprouting, and also you'll have a lot of deadwood on the stub coming back. The proper procedure is to come back to a branch that's already sprouted and cut just outside of that, leaving the collar, like we discussed earlier, intact. So now you've reduced a good 3 foot off of that, taken weight off of the branch, as well as shaped up the crown of the tree. Another cut would be like this branch that's getting out kind of long. I trail back. Here's a nice branch growing up from there, and I just cut out from here. Notice that I have my blade cutting up from the bottom instead of down from the top. That helps to keep from rip and tear of the vascular tissue. Tree pruning in the field of arboriculture is a combination of science and art. A general understanding of tree biology and growth responses to pruning, practicing some of these basic techniques, will help you to develop your own art for pruning trees, not only benefiting the tree, but your urban environment. I'm Richard Adkins with the City of Phoenix. Happy pruning.